Hi, so we are now going to do an overview of lesson 1.2, and this is still within unit 1. The lesson goal for this particular lesson is about articulating personal visions of good work by discussing examples of good workers. Here are your assessment tools, the CASEL alignment, as we always list, portfolio documentation, resources, additional resources available. And some of these will be repeated. So some of these are from the previous version as well, the previous lesson. And the prerequisite is lesson 1.1. There is an optional refresher. So you could share the introduction to the Good Project lesson plans, depending again on how long it's been since you did the first lesson. And then I'm just going to dive right into the lesson itself. So we suggest beginning by revisiting norms, the norms that you established with the previous lesson. Ask the students if they've had any thoughts or additional reflections since that first lesson about what should be added or changed. And I also just share here some suggestions about agreement in a classroom from one of our colleagues who is part of our community of practice. And then this is an additional resource as well, also about classroom norm setting from EL Education, which is a network within the US. So just take 5 minutes to do that, to just sort of set the stage for your work together. And then we suggest diving right into thinking about an example good worker. It should take about 10 minutes. So ask each student to think about, who do you believe exemplifies good work? And we'd suggest that you resist the temptation to define good work. You'll see this note here, which is really, they might ask for definitions, but we suggest that you don't give them definitions, because part of this activity is really unpacking what preconceptions might be about both of those words, good and work. Really not as obvious as you might think. So resist the temptation to define for your students, and let them know that as they think about someone who's a good worker, it could be somebody they know, it could be a family member or a friend, or a famous person that they've never met. It could be someone real or even fictional. So just think about that person, get them in mind, and then ask them to talk about, write 1 or 2 paragraph reflection about who the person is, what kind of work they do, and why they believe they exemplify good work. You could model this activity for your students, might be helpful. And then once they've completed that reflection, just ask them to go and circle some words or phrases. So what are the words that really stick out to them? It might be adjectives like hardworking or thoughtful. Keep that reflection for the portfolio. And here are some additional thoughts about deconstructing the terms, suggestions from other educators who've done this activity before. And then we offer 5 minutes to turn and talk, to discuss with another student their ideas. So just get them reflecting out loud, and to pay particular attention to, for example, areas where their own viewpoints might differ from that of their partner. Here, another suggestion, when you're placing them in small groups, something many of you probably do anyway, we suggest that you try to mix up those groups, and so they're not always working with the same partner. Then the bulk of this class is 20 minutes for a full group brainstorm. So ask 1 or 2 students to volunteer. You're bringing the whole class together to talk about their example of a good worker in front of the entire class. Create some sort of shared visible space. It could be giant Post-its or a blackboard or a whiteboard, or even digitally, where you collect these examples of good work. So you're really going to focus on contributing descriptors, or the adjectives that describe or characterize these good workers. So honesty, creativity, caring, visionary, those sorts of things. So continue until it probably won't take you very long to get a dozen qualities. If depending on timing and your particular constraints, you might want to go even longer. And then talk about places where students might disagree. And then give them a warning that you'll be returning to this list at the beginning of the next lesson. Another suggestion here about student engagement from another educator who's used these materials. The students had really appreciated that there was no right or wrong answer, that they weren't going to be judged, and that freed them up to be more participatory. And then finally, an exit ticket to think a little bit more about what characteristics of that good worker you might choose to really emulate in their own life and how. So that is lesson 1.2.